I'll never forget the night I heard the whispers from the graveyard by my house. It was close enough to the street that I thought I knew it well, but that night, it felt different, alive in a way that chilled me to the bone. I was walking home late after hanging out with friends, the streetlights flickering above me. I always took the same path, past the old stone fence that surrounded the graveyard. I'd heard stories about it, but they felt like just that, stories. The locals said that when the sun set, the graveyard would transform, drawing people in with soft voices and shadows that danced just out of sight. As I passed the gate, I heard it, a low murmur like a crowd whispering secrets. My heart raced. I glanced around, half expecting someone to be there, but the street was empty. I shrugged it off. Just my imagination, right? But then I noticed something strange. The shadows near the tombstones seemed to move, bending in unnatural ways. I squinted, trying to make sense of it. A chill crawled up my spine. That's when I saw it. A figure standing between the graves. It was too dark to see clearly, but I could feel its gaze on me, heavy and hungry. I stepped back, ready to turn and run, but something stopped me. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. "Come closer," they beckoned, a mix of sweet and sinister. I could feel their pull, like hands reaching for me through the darkness. Suddenly, the streetlights flickered again, casting an eerie glow over the graveyard. I could see the figure more clearly now. It wasn't just one person. It looked like a crowd, but all were twisted, as if caught between worlds. Their eyes glinted in the dark, reflecting a hunger that made my stomach turn. "Join us," they whispered in unison. My feet felt glued to the ground. I didn't want to move closer, but it felt like something inside me wanted to go. I shook my head, trying to clear the fog creeping into my mind. "Stay!" the voice boomed, echoing through the stillness. The figure reached out and I finally found my legs. I turned and ran, the whispers trailing behind me, growing angrier. I sprinted down the street, heart pounding, and didn't stop until I was home. That night, I locked every door and turned off the lights. But the whispers didn't stop. They haunted my dreams, pulling me back to that graveyard, urging me to return. I thought it was just a nightmare, but each night, the whispers grew louder, more persuasive. The next evening, I tried to shake it off. I met up with friends, but every laugh reminded me of that sinister call. When I finally got home, the shadows outside my window seemed deeper, stretching longer than they should. I felt eyes watching me, waiting. I tried to ignore it, but something was changing. I couldn't sleep. I spent hours staring at the wall, the whispers still echoing in my head. I knew I had to go back to that graveyard. There was a pull I couldn't resist, like a thread weaving through my mind, tighter and tighter. The following night, I gathered my courage and walked to the graveyard again. The moon hung high and everything felt eerily calm. As I approached, I could hear the whispers clearer than ever. "You came back," they sang. "You're one of us now." I stood at the gate, heart racing, but this time I didn't feel fear. I felt drawn in, almost comforted by their voices. I took a step forward, the shadows swirling around me, wrapping me in their cold embrace. "Stay," they said, and I couldn't help but nod. I was finally home. I stepped through the gate, the air heavy with anticipation. The moment my foot touched the grass, the whispers intensified, filling my ears with a melody that both thrilled and terrified me. The shadows danced around me, flickering like candle flames. "Join us," they chanted, each word pulling me deeper into the graveyard. I felt lightheaded, as if I was floating. I couldn't remember why I'd been afraid. The figures began to emerge from the darkness, their features sharpening in the moonlight. They were familiar yet foreign, faces of people I once knew twisted into eerie smiles. I recognized classmates, neighbors, even a teacher from elementary school. All of them had vanished years ago, their fates long forgotten. "Why did you leave us?" one of them asked, her voice dripping with sorrow. "We've waited so long." The weight of their sadness washed over me, and I felt a surge of guilt. I had moved on with my life while they were trapped here, their souls tethered to this ground. It was my fault. "Come, we'll show you," they urged, leading me deeper into the graveyard. The air was thick, heavy with something unnameable. I followed them, unable to resist, as they beckoned me toward an ancient oak tree at the center. Its gnarled branches reached out like skeletal fingers. "Here is where we play," another voice whispered. "Here is where we rest." I felt a sense of belonging I hadn't known I craved. The tree seemed to pulse with energy, and I could almost hear the heartbeat of the earth beneath me. The figures began to circle around, their movements fluid and hypnotic. "Stay with us, forever," they sang. I looked around, entranced by their rhythm. My heart raced, not with fear, but with an overwhelming sense of peace. But a flicker of doubt crept in. What about my family? My friends? Would they worry? The moment I thought of them, a sharp pain struck my chest. The figures paused, their smiles fading. "You can't go back," one of them said, stepping closer. "You belong here now. This is your home." The whispers surged again, drowning out my thoughts. I felt the tree's roots wrapping around my feet, pulling me closer, as if it was trying to merge me with the very ground. Panic flickered inside me, and I fought against the pull. "No!" I shouted, breaking free for a moment. "I don't want this!" The figures recoiled, and for a heartbeat, I saw anger flash in their eyes. "You think you can leave?" They hissed, their voices now sharp and cold. I turned to run, but the shadows closed in around me, tightening their grip. I stumbled back toward the gate, the whispers morphing into a roar of rage. "You can't escape us!" they cried, their laughter echoing like thunder. Just as I reached the gate, a figure lunged at me, fingers grasping for my arm. I felt the chill of their touch seep into my skin, freezing me in place. I fought against the urge to turn back, to listen to their sweet promises. With every ounce of strength, I pushed through the gate, bursting out onto the street. The night air hit me like a wave, and I ran, gasping for breath. I could still hear the whispers trailing behind me, full of anger and longing. I didn't stop until I was back in my room, slamming the door shut. But even then, I could feel their presence lurking outside. I tried to convince myself it was over, that I had escaped. But as I lay in bed, the shadows of my room twisted and contorted, mimicking the figures I'd seen. Days turned into weeks, but the whispers never truly faded. They crept into my mind during the quiet moments, reminding me of the graveyard, of the friends I had lost. I felt their call growing stronger, like a siren song I couldn't ignore. One night I stood by my window, staring into the dark. The graveyard glimmered in the distance, almost inviting. I wondered if I could face them again, if I could convince them I was still one of them, but different, alive. The next evening I found myself standing at the gate once more, heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, and the shadows seemed to pulse in rhythm with my heartbeat. "Welcome back," the whispers greeted me, softer now, almost tender. "You've come to stay." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their longing. Maybe this time I would join them willingly. Maybe this time I could become part of their world. As I stepped inside, I knew this was just the beginning. The night was far from over. As I stepped into the graveyard, a wave of warmth washed over me, mingling with the cold dread that had lingered since that first encounter. The whispers enveloped me, pulling me deeper into their embrace. I felt a strange sense of clarity, as if the shadows were unveiling hidden truths. "Come, we have so much to show you," one familiar face called, her eyes shimmering in the dark. It was my neighbor, the one who had vanished years ago. She smiled, and the others stepped aside, forming a path toward the ancient oak tree. "Every night is a new adventure," she said, beckoning me closer. I could see now how the shadows danced, creating a tapestry of stories woven into the fabric of the night. They whispered secrets of those who had come before me, lives cut short, dreams left unfulfilled. As I approached the tree, the ground beneath me felt alive. Roots twisted around my feet, grounding me in a way I hadn't expected. I was drawn to its gnarled trunk, feeling a pulse, a heartbeat that matched my own. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Nothing but your company," the whispers echoed back. "Join us in this eternal night. You'll never be alone again." I hesitated, thinking of my life outside these walls, but the allure of belonging was strong. "What happens to those who stay?" I questioned, looking around at the faces I once knew. "They become part of the story," my neighbor replied, her smile widening. "You will be remembered, cherished. You'll watch over the living, guiding them until it's their time." A shiver ran down my spine. I wasn't just a visitor. I was being offered a role in something much larger. The weight of that decision pressed down on me. As I pondered, the whispers morphed into a soft melody, lulling me into a trance. "Stay with us," they sang. "You are one of us now." The boundaries between my life and theirs blurred, and I felt the threads of my existence intertwining with theirs. In that moment, the urge to flee faded. I could feel the energy of the graveyard wrapping around me, pulling me into its fold. The loneliness I had felt in the living world began to dissolve. I stepped forward, the roots encasing my feet, welcoming me home. Suddenly, a sharp noise broke the spell, a car horn blaring from the street. I turned, the sound jolting me back to reality. The living world was just beyond the gate, vibrant and noisy. For a brief moment, I hesitated. "Let's not linger in the past," one of the figures whispered, urgency in their tone. "You must choose now." I stood at the crossroads of my life, torn between two worlds. The car horn faded, but the whispers swelled, growing louder, more insistent. "You'll forget them. You'll forget everything. Embrace the night." My heart raced. I didn't want to lose everything I had known, but the thought of never feeling that loneliness again was intoxicating. The warmth of the graveyard enveloped me, making it hard to think clearly. With every second, the pull grew stronger. I could see my future unfolding before me, an endless existence filled with companionship, laughter, and stories shared beneath the stars. I reached out, my fingers brushing the rough bark of the oak tree. But then I remembered. My family, my friends. They were out there, living, wondering where I had gone. Tears filled my eyes as the reality hit me. "I can't forget them," I whispered, the resolve strengthening in my voice. "Then you'll suffer," the figures hissed, their expressions darkening. "You'll always feel their absence." The shadows shifted, and for a moment, I could see the pain in their eyes. I realized then that they were trapped too, caught between worlds, longing for connection just as I was. With newfound determination, I stepped back. "I choose life," I shouted, turning toward the gate. The shadows surged forward, their whispers turning into cries of anger and desperation. I sprinted for the exit, heart pounding. I could feel the icy tendrils of their grasp reaching for me, trying to pull me back. I pushed through the gate, just as the first figure lunged, their fingers grazing my arm. I stumbled onto the street, gasping for breath, the weight of their whispers still echoing in my mind. I looked back, the graveyard looming behind me, the figures standing at the gate, faces twisted with fury and longing. But I was free, at least for now. The night was still, but the whispers lingered, a haunting reminder of the choice I had made. As I walked home, I knew this wasn't the end. The graveyard would always call to me, and I could feel their presence lurking in the shadows, waiting for the moment I might falter. I climbed into bed, heart racing. Sleep wouldn't come. I lay there, listening to the stillness, knowing that my connection to that place would never truly fade. The whispers might have quieted, but deep down I understood. I had merely postponed the inevitable. That night, sleep evaded me completely. I lay wide awake, the weight of my choice pressing heavily on my chest. The whispers haunted my thoughts, echoing like a distant memory. I couldn't shake the feeling that I hadn't escaped. I had merely put off the reckoning. Days passed, but the shadows never fully left my mind. I tried to go about my life, school, friends, even family gatherings, but every moment felt hollow. The laughter around me felt like a cruel joke, a constant reminder of what I had almost joined. Then one evening, the urge became too strong to ignore. I found myself standing outside my house, staring down the road toward the graveyard. The night was thick with fog, casting an eerie glow over the street. I knew I shouldn't go back, but the pull was irresistible. I walked slowly, each step heavy with uncertainty. As I approached the gate, a chill ran down my spine. The moment I crossed the threshold, the air changed. The whispers were back, soft and inviting. "Welcome home," they murmured. I hesitated at the entrance, but the longing was overwhelming. "Stay with us forever," they urged, circling me once more. I looked at their eager faces and felt the pull of their longing. It was intoxicating, but a flicker of doubt nagged at me. "What happens to me if I stay?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. "You will become one of us," they answered, their voices harmonizing. "You will never feel lonely again. You will help others find their way." Suddenly, a memory flashed before my eyes. My little sister's face, full of worry the last time I had seen her. The thought of her left behind broke something inside me. "I can't abandon her," I cried. The figures faltered, and for a moment I could see their desperation mirrored in my own. "You won't abandon her," one whispered. "You will guide her. You will always be with her, just like we are with you." Their words resonated, and I felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps there was a way to bridge both worlds. "If I stay," I began, my voice trembling, "I can help others. I can make sure they don't feel alone." "Yes," they chorused, their excitement palpable. "You can be our messenger. Together we can reach those who wander." I closed my eyes, the idea swirling in my mind. The graveyard could be a place of guidance, a sanctuary for the lost. Maybe I didn't have to choose between life and this existence. I could be a part of both. But as I opened my eyes, the shadows around me shifted, their faces twisting into expressions of something darker. "You must decide quickly," one figure warned, the urgency returning to their tone. "The longer you wait, the harder it will be to turn back." I felt the pressure building, my heart racing. I could feel the boundaries of my reality closing in, the graveyard's allure tugging at me. I needed to act before it was too late. "I will help you," I said, my voice steady now. "But I can't lose myself. I need to remember who I am." The figures paused, and I could sense their hesitation. "Very well," one said slowly. "But once you step into our world, the choice will always linger. You cannot forget." "I understand," I replied, fear and determination coiling together. "I'll walk the line between both worlds." As the words left my lips, I felt a shift in the air. The shadows closed in around me, wrapping me in their embrace. I felt the tree's pulse sync with my heartbeat, and I knew I was crossing a threshold. The living and the dead. The shadows whispered their secrets into my ears, and I felt a surge of knowledge flooding my mind. Stories of those who had walked these paths before me. "Now you'll guide others," they said, their voices a symphony of hope and despair. "Help them find their way. We are all waiting for you." I opened my eyes, the graveyard now pulsing with energy. I could sense the lost souls wandering the edges, drawn to my presence. My heart raced with the weight of my new responsibility, and I took a deep breath. "Let's begin," I said, stepping forward into the darkness, ready to embrace my new role. The moment I stepped deeper into the graveyard, I felt a surge of power coursing through me. The shadows seemed to vibrate with anticipation, and the air thickened with an electric energy. I could see faint outlines of figures lingering at the edges, drawn to me as if I were a beacon in the night. "Where do I start?" I asked, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. "Listen," one of the figures replied, stepping forward. It was a young man with sorrowful eyes. "Feel the pull of the lost. They will come to you when they need guidance." I nodded, trying to absorb their words. As I stood there, I focused on the stillness around me, the way the moonlight filtered through the trees, casting long shadows. I closed my eyes, tuning into the whispers that now felt like an extension of my own thoughts. And then I heard it, a faint voice, barely discernible. "Help me." It was soft, fragile, echoing from somewhere just beyond the graves. "Someone is near," I said, opening my eyes. The figures around me shifted, eager. "Where?" The shadows swirled, guiding me toward a cluster of tombstones. I walked slowly, feeling the pull of the voice grow stronger. It led me to a small grave, weathered and overgrown. The name was barely visible, but the energy surrounding it was unmistakable. "Here," I said, kneeling beside the grave. "What do you want?" "Please, don't leave me," the voice whispered again, filled with a profound sadness. "I'm lost." I felt a pang of empathy wash over me. "You're not alone," I called into the darkness. "I can help you find peace." As I spoke, the air around me shimmered, and the figure of a young girl materialized, her eyes wide with fear. She looked around, confused, the sorrow etched on her delicate features. "Who are you?" "I'm someone who understands," I said gently. "I'm here to guide you. You don't have to be lost anymore." Her gaze shifted to the shadows surrounding me, and I felt the others drawing closer, their presence providing strength. "But I don't know where to go," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. "Let me show you," I replied, reaching out a hand. "You can follow me. We'll find your way together." As she took my hand, I felt a rush of energy, like a current flowing between us. The whispers grew louder, guiding me as we moved through the graveyard. I led her toward the ancient oak tree, where the pulse of life felt strongest. "Why can't I go home?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I don't want to be here." "You've been trapped between worlds," I explained softly. "But you can find peace. You just have to let go of what binds you." We reached the tree, its branches stretching out like welcoming arms. I turned to the girl, kneeling so we were eye level. "You are loved, and you are not forgotten. Your family still thinks of you. If you let go, you can find them again." She looked uncertain, glancing around at the figures who had gathered, watching intently. "What if I'm scared?" The shadows leaned in, their whispers turning soothing. "You're safe with us," one said. "We will guide you." I squeezed her hand gently. "I'll be here with you. You don't have to do this alone." Taking a deep breath, the girl nodded slowly. "Okay, I trust you." With that, I led her to the base of the tree where the roots curled up from the earth, inviting her to rest. I felt the energy shifting, and I knew this was the moment. The whispers enveloped us, swirling in a comforting embrace. "Let go," I urged, feeling the connection deepen. "You are ready." As she closed her eyes, the shadows around us brightened, shimmering with an ethereal light, the air filled with a sweet scent like blooming flowers. I could see her beginning to fade, her form becoming lighter, almost transparent. "I'm not afraid anymore," she whispered, a smile breaking through her tears. "Thank you." With one final nod, she stepped into the light, and in an instant, she was gone. The whispers swelled into a triumphant chorus, wrapping around me like a warm blanket. I stood up, heart racing, exhilaration coursing through my veins. I had done it. I had helped someone find peace. But the moment of triumph was short-lived. I could still feel the weight of many others, lost and waiting. The figures gathered around me, their faces glowing with approval. "You've taken your first step," one of them said, his voice filled with warmth. "But there are many more who need your help." I took a deep breath, determination settling in my chest. "I'm ready. I won't turn back." The shadows swirled around me, leading me toward the next lost soul, and I knew this was only the beginning. I was becoming a bridge, a guide, a part of something much larger than myself. And in that dark graveyard, I realized that even in death there was hope, and I was finally where I belonged. As I moved deeper into the graveyard, the atmosphere pulsed with renewed energy. The whispers grew louder, filled with anticipation. Each step felt like stepping into a new purpose, a calling I had never anticipated. "Who needs help next?" I asked, looking around at the shadows that surrounded me. They shifted and swirled, pointing toward a cluster of graves at the far edge of the cemetery. I followed their guidance, my heart pounding with both excitement and trepidation. The moon hung low, casting an eerie glow over the stones, illuminating the names engraved upon them. But one grave stood out, the stone cracked and worn, its name barely legible. As I approached, I felt a deep sorrow emanating from the grave. "Help! Me!" The voice was weaker this time, almost a whisper carried on the breeze. "Who are you?" I called softly, kneeling beside the grave. A figure began to form, a young man with haunted eyes looking lost and forlorn. "I can't find my way," he said, his voice trembling. "I thought I could, but I'm trapped here." I reached out a hand, feeling the weight of his despair. "You're not trapped anymore. I'm here to help you. Let's find your peace." He looked up, uncertainty clouding his gaze. "But how? I don't remember. I don't know where to go." "Focus on the love you left behind," I said gently. "Think of those who cared for you. They still remember you, even if it feels like you've been forgotten." His expression softened, and I could see the flicker of memories surfacing. "My sister, she used to sing to me," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "Then let that memory guide you," I encouraged. "We'll call her here." I closed my eyes, reaching out with my thoughts, channeling the connection I felt to the world beyond. "Sister, if you're out there, hear me. Your brother is lost but wishes to find you." The air around us thickened, and the shadows began to dance, forming a pathway toward the trees lining the cemetery. I could feel the energy shifting, anticipation growing. Suddenly, a soft light emerged from the path, illuminating the darkness. A figure materialized. A girl, her face radiant with hope and longing. "Brother," she called, her voice echoing like music. "Here!" he shouted, rushing toward her. I stepped aside, feeling the power of their connection. They embraced, tears streaming down both their faces, and in that moment, the sorrow that had weighed him down began to lift. "You found me," he exclaimed, his voice filled with disbelief. "I never stopped looking," she replied, her eyes sparkling with joy. "I knew you were out there." As they held each other, I felt the energy around me shift again. The whispers became a harmonious chorus, celebrating the reunion. I knew I had played a part in this moment, and it filled me with warmth. "Now it's time to move on," I said softly, watching as they turned toward the glowing path. "Will you be okay?" he asked, glancing back at me, vulnerability etched on his face. I smiled. "You're not alone anymore. Go find your peace together." With that, they stepped into the light, and I watched as they faded, their figures becoming one with the glow. The air buzzed with a sense of fulfillment. The weight of their loss finally lifted. But as the energy settled, I felt a tug in my heart. There were still so many waiting. "Who else needs help?" I whispered into the darkness, determined to continue. The shadows shifted again, and I felt their guidance leading me deeper into the graveyard. This time the whispers were quieter, more subdued, as if they were letting me choose my path. I walked, my footsteps steady, until I reached a large stone marked by a heavy silence. It bore the name of a woman whose story I had heard in whispers, someone whose spirit was said to roam the edges of the cemetery, searching for something she had lost. "Are you here?" I called out gently. "I want to help you." A gust of wind swept through the trees, and a figure began to coalesce in front of me, a woman with a weary expression, her eyes filled with sadness. "Hostel, you can see me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Yes," I replied, my heart aching for her. "What do you seek?" "I lost my child," she said, her voice breaking. "I can't find her anywhere." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her sorrow. "We can search together. She's here, waiting for you." "Are you sure?" she asked, doubt creeping into her tone. "I can feel it," I assured her. "Let's call her to us." I focused, drawing on the connection I had built in the graveyard. "Child, if you're near, hear your mother's call. She's searching for you." The air around us shifted, and I sensed the energy change. A soft glow began to form nearby, illuminating a small figure. A little girl appeared, her face filled with innocence and light. "Mommy?" she called, her voice bright and sweet. The woman gasped, rushing forward. "My baby!" They embraced, the bond of love radiating between them, so strong that it felt like it could light up the entire graveyard. Tears streamed down the mother's face as she held her daughter tightly. "I've missed you so much." "I missed you too," the girl replied, beaming up at her mother. "I'm so glad you found me." The warmth of their reunion enveloped me, and I felt a sense of purpose flood through me. "Now you can go together," I said gently, standing back to give them space. "Thank you," the mother whispered, her eyes shining with gratitude. As they stepped toward the light, I felt the shadows around me pulse with approval, wrapping me in their embrace. I watched as they faded into the glow, my heart swelling with joy. But even as the air settled, I knew this was far from over. The graveyard held many more souls waiting for release, and I was ready to help them find their way. "Who's next?" I asked the shadows, a sense of determination filling me. They swirled around, guiding me toward the next lost spirit, and I felt the thrill of my new purpose wash over me. I was not just a bridge between worlds. I was a guide, a guardian for the souls who wandered in darkness, ready to lead them into the light. As I moved deeper into the graveyard, the atmosphere pulsed with renewed energy. The whispers grew louder, filled with anticipation. Each step felt like stepping into a new purpose, a calling I had never anticipated. "Who needs help next?" I asked, looking around at the shadows that surrounded me. They shifted and swirled, pointing toward a cluster of graves at the far edge of the cemetery. Suddenly, a gentle breeze swept through, rustling the leaves as if the very earth was thanking me. I sensed that this sacred space was ready to be abandoned, to retreat from the world of the living. The whispers that had once filled the night quieted, and the shadows dimmed. "This place is at peace now," I said softly, standing up. "You can rest." As I turned to leave, I felt a pull toward the edge of the cemetery. I followed it until I reached the old iron gate. Just as I touched the latch, I turned back for one last look. The graveyard seemed to shimmer, then fade, the outlines of the stones dissolving into the night. The graveyard had hidden itself, a secret lost to time, leaving behind only whispers of its existence. I could feel it in my bones. It would no longer appear on maps or in memories. It had become a refuge, tucked away from prying eyes. But even as I walked away, a thought lingered in my mind. For those who had lost their way and sought answers, the memories of that place would remain, alive in the stories I would share. So, I am asking you that is viewing now. Do you want to know the location? I am feeling the weight of all I had experienced. If you need it, subscribe and comment. I need the location. But remember, this is a place of healing, not just a destination. With that, I stepped into the darkness, knowing that while the graveyard had hidden itself, the journey of guiding lost souls would continue, whether in this life or the next.